Donald Trump's tariff empire just received a major constitutional knock. The U.S. Supreme Court has found that the U.S. Constitution does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. In 10 scathing words, the court demolished the legal foundation Trump used to justify broad global trade actions. And now, the entire world is asking, what happens now? But here's the actual question. Who didn't cave when those tariffs were flying? Mark Carney.
Under most normal circumstances, the U.S. president does not typically have the power to impose tariffs. This is plain as day, bedrock constitutional consensus, which reads, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes and duties. Congress, not the president. To get around this, Trump often invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, which the U.S. Supreme Court has now dismantled in exactly 10 words. Held, as in upheld, IEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs.
Trump constructed his tariff policy on one word, emergency. He called trade deficits a national emergency. He utilized EA to sidestep Congress, and the Supreme Court said no. Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes and charges. Tariffs may be regarded as taxes, but taxes belong to Congress, not the president. That is not political opinion. That is constitutional philosophy. This verdict directly undercuts the legal reason behind massive global tax waves placed on allies and rivals alike, and that includes tariffs on Canada.
Even on Liberation Day, we had China who retaliated. There's been a back and forth between Canada. But this is actually a net benefit for Canada. So those non-CUSMA originating goods are currently facing something like a 35% tariff. That will go down to 15% while these measures are in place. So you actually have quite a few countries who are going to benefit from this new tariff regime in terms of some tariff relief.
Trump developed his tariff policy on one word, emergency. He called trade deficits a national emergency. He utilized EA to sidestep Congress, and the Supreme Court said no. Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes and charges. Tariffs may be regarded as taxes, but taxes belong to Congress, not the president. That is not political opinion. That is constitutional philosophy. This verdict directly undercuts the legal reason behind massive global tax waves placed on allies and rivals alike, and that includes tariffs on Canada.
Yes, Trump has already ordered a new 10% global tariff through a different legal avenue than IEPA, which may wind up simply replacing the old one the Supreme Court now considers illegal.
So this global 10% tariff, the tool that Donald Trump is using, he can only impose this tariff for 150 days. There's a time limit on it. And at the end of that 150 days, Congress has to say, okay, we're going to extend this, or nah, bro, no, we're not. And in the meantime, this gives the Trump administration a whole whack of months to do investigations into different sectors to say, hey, we might want to put some tariffs on this sector over here. Oh, hey, this industry, maybe we want to do a tariff over there.
While I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful and more crystal clear.
The estimate I've seen most often is that the Supreme Court ruling throws into question somewhere between $140 and $175 billion in tariff revenue raised so far. Should that money be returned?
When those tariffs were first launched, the reaction across the globe was quick and worrisome. Governments scrambled to defend their industries. Diplomats rushed to Washington. Trade envoys negotiated fiercely behind closed doors. Concessions were made in the name of stability, and agreements were signed under the burden of uncertainty. The prevalent idea was simple. The United States owned the leverage, and refusing would only increase economic misery. Canada, at that point, was often seen as unprotected and fragile. Trump pushed pressure openly and relentlessly. Taxes on steel, tariffs on aluminum, threats against vehicles, warnings about reprisal. The story was that Ottawa will eventually be compelled to compromise. But Mark Carney took a different path. He did not rush into a headline-driven transaction. He did not accept provisions that would damage Canada's long-term position in exchange for short-term tariff relief. He frequently signaled that Canada would not compromise foundational sovereignty for temporary tranquility. He made it plain that a bad deal would be worse than no deal at all. That stance was criticized at the time as hazardous. It was framed as unyielding. It was described as obstinate. But today, with the legal foundation of those emergency tariffs removed by the Supreme Court, the strategic benefit of that constraint becomes clear. While other nations are reviewing agreements struck under pressure, Canada's customers' compliance goods remain protected inside the present framework. Carney did not gamble. He absorbed pressure, and that discipline is now yielding dividends. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Let's be clear, this is not the end of tariffs. Trump instantly pivoted. He turned to Section 122 power and slapped a new 10% global tariff limited to 150 days. This offers him temporary authority, but it also exposes something important. The emergency justification is gone. Now Congress has oversight. Now time constraints apply. Now litigation danger increases. And now every trade partner is negotiating under legal uncertainty. That is not strength. That is instability for a weakened Donald Trump. According to some sources, governments are now assessing whether previously signed treaties are worth continuing under fluctuating tariff ceilings. Some countries negotiated down to 18 to 19%. Now the ceiling is 15%. These countries now have a tariff rate which is higher than the existing one. Others had 10%. Now it's 15%. The playing field is evolving continually, and corporations are left evaluating risk mid-shipment. This is not strategic trade leadership, this is volatility. This is utter turmoil driven by Donald Trump and a chaos which Canada is not a part of. All compliments to Mark Carney. Canada evaded the worst of this wave because of CUSMA compliance exemptions. That matters. It means cross-border goods continue under the 0% regime for compliant trade. Steel and aluminum tariffs remain under separate jurisdiction. But here's the key difference. Carney did not restructure Canada's economy around fear of tariffs. He diversified. He refused to concede prematurely. He held post. Now, when global tariff legality is brought into question, Canada is not racing to redo a hurried accord. That is deliberate patience paying off. Trump called tariffs the most beautiful word in the lexicon. They are crucial to his political identity: revenue tool, pressure tool, negotiation weapon. The Supreme Court just curtailed that weapon. Yes, there are other statutory pathways. Yes, Section 122 exists. Yes, investigations can be launched. But the sweeping emergency theory has been dismantled. That matters. And it counts more for countries that did not concede under pressure. Carney won. Donald Trump lost. Carney recognized something many leaders did not. If you bargain from fright, you lock in weakness. If you negotiate from stability, you keep leverage. By refusing to hurry into compromises, Canada preserved its structural advantage under CUSMA. And now, while other governments are re-evaluating their accords in light of legal turmoil, Canada's position is remarkably stable. That is not luck, that is discipline. This is not the collapse of U.S. trade power. This is a breakdown of Donald Trump. Trump's tariff strategy just hit court pushback. And while the government scrambles to roll out Plan B, Canada is in a position that appears substantially stronger than it did months ago. The world is bewildered. Deals are questionable. Litigation is coming. But Carney did not gamble Canada's future on short-term tariff relief. He chose leverage over panic. And right now, that looks like foresight. If you want clear strategic insight on how Canada navigates global power trends without fear or political theater, subscribe to the channel. We dive down the strategy behind the headlines and the leadership decisions influencing Canada's future.